It's my understanding that Miss Rebecca got started with her political involvement originating with the Tea Party. Is that sort of a true statement? And sort of like Ron Johnson too. Ron Johnson was never a political person until he thought, and Rebecca thought, that we needed some change here in our country. Okay? And she's about making change. She was our state's 44th lieutenant governor. She's well known for her pro-life record. She's an avid hunter, and I heard you like to go out turkey hunting. Is that a correct statement too?
Also correct statement.
There's a lot of turkeys out there. We need to get rid of some of those. She's a supporter of the Second Amendment. And Monroe County was one of the first counties in Wisconsin to become a Second Amendment sanctuary county, thanks to people like Sheriff Blake Preble. She served as the executive director for the Women's Suffrage Centennial Commission, and I remember last summer on a Zoom call, you were sitting waiting for your daughter. Exactly. And she made such an amazing, or led such an amazing discussion on how Wisconsin was at the forefront for making sure the 19th Amendment was ratified. And she's founded the 1848 Project, so I hope you're able to tell us a little bit more about that. But she's a great conservative with so much energy and so much to bring to Wisconsin. Monroe County welcomes Rebecca Kleefisch.
Thank you guys so much. It is so good to be with you. I am delighted that you guys would be willing to spend your morning hanging out with me, because I've been traveling the state pretty much non-stop for a good long time. He's right. You know, we did start the 1848 Project some time ago. It is a not-for-profit, and I did this because I wanted to develop the policy agenda for the future. And I wanted to talk to conservatives across Wisconsin to hear directly from the people what you all want to see. So I did 50 listening sessions across the state, and it netted about 150 different policy ideas. And then even after that, we went into discussions with scholars and experts to even narrow that further to determine constitutionality and viability of all of those different ideas. And then we put out the Forward agenda. And you all know that Forward is our state's motto. It is a 56-point, as the Democrats call it, policy manifesto. And we're really proud of it. But then you guys probably also are aware that about 2 months ago, I resigned as the president of the 1848 Project. And then shortly thereafter, I declared my candidacy for governor of the great state of Wisconsin. And that has led me here today because I continue to listen to the people of Wisconsin. We're traveling pretty much nonstop, guys. Every day is usually between a 12 and a 16-hour day. It's a big state to drive, and we drive so many miles. Thank you, Christina. And a lot of my staff is here today. Kyle is here. I saw Eric is here somewhere, and Alex is here. And they're all hiding just for sport. There we go. Okay, Kyle's back there at least. So thank you guys for giving us all such a warm welcome. That travel actually does come with really decent media coverage. I've been shocked so far that we've been able to get as much media attention as we have. And then on top of that, we've also been able to fundraise quite a bit. And as you guys are aware, Tony Evers is a very moneyed candidate. This is a presidential bellwether state. We know that the eyes of the country are going to be focused here on Wisconsin, because we're going to be a predictor of what happens in the presidential election in 2024. And that being said, we know that Tony Evers, the DNC, the Democrat Party of Wisconsin, and the Democrat Governors Association are just going to make it rain on Tony Evers. But on top of that, last July, he already announced he had $7.3 million in the bank, and he's already shown his willingness to spend that money on us. About 2 weeks ago, they launched their first statewide negative TV ad against us. And to me, takes the wrong bet. If that's on COVID, he would call this event right now a super spreader event. And that is basically what the entire ad is attacking me on. And friends, you guys chose, because you have individual liberties, to come to breakfast in Sparta, Wisconsin at the VFW and enjoy a little company to talk about how we're going to bring down Tony Evers. And I think that is your right to do so. And so I'm excited that we're about to take back control. I'm excited that we're going to give our individual liberties and rights the position in our lives that they actually deserve. And I am excited that Tony Evers gets the fine opportunity to take one of those many, many jobs that remains unfilled in Wisconsin's private sector. Won't that be something special to see? Because, guys, here's the thing. Over the last 2.5 years, Tony Evers shut down our economy. He shut down our schools. He shut down our churches. And now it is time for us to shut down Tony Evers. Are you with me? Good. Good. Now it's going to take all of us pulling in the same direction for a good long time. We are 365 days plus 2 out from this election now. It's going to take every single one of those days in order to get us across the finish line for conservatism. I say that because Wisconsin is still a 50-50 state. That means that Democrats come in expecting that 48% of the vote is just going to be theirs. Republicans come in expecting that 48% of the vote is theirs, and we all fight for that 4% in the middle. It is a year-long knife fight in a phone booth. That sounds like fun, right? It's just a year. You can do anything as long as it's finite, friends. It is going to be a challenge, but it is a challenge worth taking on. And so I would ask you to walk away with that little card on your table and not keep it. To hand it to a friend who needs to see it, who needs to know more about our movement to retake Wisconsin for its people. Because this is too important. This is about your kids and grandkids and my kids and hopefully my future grandkids. I'm running for governor to take back control for you guys and for my children. But listen, I know my kids are not going to come back to the state of Wisconsin unless we can promise that there are safe communities and schools with actual accountability and good jobs for them. And Tony Evers is capable of doing absolutely none of those things. There are people out there today who I don't terribly disagree with who will say, well, Tony Evers is not a bad man. Okay. But he is not up to this job. He is far too weak for this moment. We need a strong leader who will restore our rights and allow you to take back control. And so when you talk to your friends, either the one you give that card to or someone else, when you talk to them, I ask you to share with them 4 simple things. 4 simple things. We need to get back to work, back to school, back the badge, and give government back to the people. Yeah. 4 simple things. Back to work, back to school, back to badge, give government back to the people. Now, if you have their attention for more than just those 4 things, because that's a very short elevator pitch, here is what I would advise you to tell these people. Number 1, back to work. Tony Evers has completely failed on Wisconsin's economy. When COVID-19 swept across this country, he shut down Wisconsin's economy. And then, what is worse, he chose winners and losers. He literally had the gall to tell Wisconsinites that they were not essential.
Yes.
And as you guys know, in most circumstances, it was the small businesses who were told that they just weren't needed in our economy right now. And then, when tens of thousands of Wisconsinites inevitably lost their jobs and called the Department of Workforce Development just to get their unemployment insurance, he couldn't even be bothered to pick up the phone. And now 18 months later, there are still people in Wisconsin who have still not received their benefits, who are still asking friends and neighbors for a little bit of help to make ends meet so they can just pay their rent or their car insurance. Wisconsin. Then amazingly, when our small businesses finally began to recover because they're so awesome and resilient, and hang help wanted signs and ask you all to please be patient as customers, Tony Evers was paying people more to sit on the sidelines than to actually go to work. He is too weak for this moment. He is just not up to the job. Friends, as governor, I would assure we get back to work and have the workers to actually make this economy go. Yes, I would invest in infrastructure, but also worker training to make sure that we meet the needs of Wisconsin's employers. I would also ensure that at every K-12 school district across the state of Wisconsin, we finally invest in trades and vocational training where we need more help. And we need to double the number of youth apprenticeships. We need to get back to work. But we also need to get back to school. It is crazy to me that in Monroe County, things are different than in Brown County, or Milwaukee County, or in my Jefferson County. How is it that, when I look at this picture, and my daughter here, who is a sophomore in high school, gets to go to school every day without a mask on, and can hear her teachers clearly, and can participate in athletics? Because we go to Kettle Moraine High School, and not any high school in Milwaukee or Madison.
Or Sparta.
I didn't even realize that Sparta was doing this too. Guys, how is that fair? That my kid gets to have the full high school experience, and your kids don't. It's 2021. How is some other mom and some other girl facing a rigged system? It's not fair. And this is Tony Evers, Wisconsin. And it's not just that. I mean, he shut down schools for a year and a half in order to remain beholden to the teachers union bosses who buy and pay for his elections. And now I make a really important distinction there, and I hope you guys noticed it. I said teachers union bosses because the teachers I know have been heartbroken over what has happened to their kids over the last year and a half. They have seen the year and a half of learning loss and a year and a half of anxiety and depression, which is now wreaking havoc not only on grades, but also kids' mental health and ability to cope in the classroom and just be with peers. And so it's really important that people know that there is a difference. And Tony Evers remains beholden to the far leftists and teachers union bosses on the far fringes of his political party. It's no good. A couple weeks ago, the new standardized test scores came out. I don't know if you saw them, but I'll tell you this, in the year 2021, 8% of black kids are testing at or above grade level in the state of Wisconsin.
Oh my.
How is this okay? It's not. The system is rigged so that Tony Evers, literally the man who is the architect of the status quo, remember, he was the state superintendent of schools before he became governor and shut down our schools. He is the architect of all of it. And we need to stop him. We need to open our schools back up, fully open our schools, but we need to give parents more choice. And as your governor, I would assure that we give parents more choice with a program that's simple and understandable so that more moms and dads not only can pick the best fit for their kids, but also we have more transparency. You know, it was really nice that when Lauren and the rest of the entire legislature, Nancy and others, passed this transparency bill that assured that moms and dads and taxpayers could see where the finances go in school districts, that Tony Evers actually signed it. But what's very unfortunate, I think, is that parents are also asking to see what is being taught, what the curriculum is inside their kids' classrooms. And he seems a little bit more reluctant to go after that. Want to know why? Because we parents should know what is being taught in our kids' classrooms. Yes. And not only that, it should be critical thinking skills and not critical race theory. We have to ban the teaching of hate. And we need to make sure that our kids get the choices that they want and the choices that parents need for good education. You know, it's terribly sad, but only 3%, only 3 children died over the last year of COVID-19. It's tragic. And I'm not a COVID denier, guys. 3 kids died, and I understand that. But, you know, as we talk about getting back to work and back to school, I also think it's important that we talk about backing the badge. Because while 3 children died of COVID-19, 20 died as homicide victims in Milwaukee.
Wow.
It is nearly unbelievable. The last year there were 190 murders in Milwaukee, and this year we are on pace for even more. There was a 60% increase in murders in Green Bay over the last year. And this is a rising violent crime rate that we're seeing across the state. Did you guys know in the Wisconsin Dells, you know, where we advertise the water park capital of the world, there was a murder a few weeks ago? Did you know about the drive-by shooting this past spring? And it's not just there. In Madison, where we also advertise the world's largest outdoor farmers market, there was a cop shot a couple weeks ago. And a shooting 2 blocks off State Street where that world's largest farmers market happens. We're not talking about our tourism destinations also being the place where the bad guys go. We need to back the badge, because it's not just the violent crime spilling across the state. It is also very specific examples that are making national news. You guys have probably seen that you can live stream the trial of Kyle Rittenhouse right now. One more reason Wisconsin makes it on TV, right? The reminder of what Tony Evers did or did not do in Kenosha. After a police-involved shooting there, he watched the same 30 seconds of cell phone video that we all did, but then he became jury and judge and executioner in that one moment, and he sided with rioters over good police. $50 million went up in smoke. Small business owners lost their livelihoods overnight. Families were huddled in their homes, hopeful that the rioters wouldn't come after them. 2 men had to die before Tony Evers could even be bothered to show up. And once he finally did and was asked by the media what took him so long, they had the gall to say, it's hard to travel in COVID-19. Friends, last year in the middle of COVID-19, I did 86 events. I've probably done more than 300 this year alone. It is not hard to travel in COVID-19. It is about priorities. And the priority of the governor of Wisconsin must be to be with her people. Yeah, on their most joyous occasions, but also in times of tragedy and chaos, to be there to solve problems, even when you face your greatest challenges. That is the job of the governor. He is not up to the job. As governor, I would assure that we're going to put 1,000 more cops on the streets of Wisconsin, and we will use state patrol when we need to surge in violent crime areas, as well as the National Guard. And I'll use the bully pulpit of the governor's office to actually back the badge. Because that is what our brave men and women who stand on the thin blue line deserve from us. Back to work, back to school, back the badge. Thank you. But then I need to get to my last point that remember you're sharing with your friends who are in that 4% that we need to bring across the finish line with us. And that is returning government back to the people. Last week, I stood with healthcare workers and moms and dads in Eau Claire, across from the Mayo Clinic, where moms and dads were asked to choose between feeding their families and keeping their jobs in healthcare, where just last year they were told they were healthcare heroes, and getting a vaccine that they decided was not the right healthcare choice for them. I told you before, I'm not a COVID denier. I'm also not a vaccine denier. I'm a cancer survivor. I chose to get the vaccine. But what's right for me is not necessarily right for you. And government has absolutely no business telling you what medical treatments you must get. Workers, and I demanded that Tony Evers stand up to Joe Biden and sue the federal government and tell him to end this unconstitutional vaccine mandate. Yes. But shockingly, guys, every morning since I have awakened to find that Tony Evers has yet to file the lawsuit. So I think that Tony Evers is just too weak for the job. So returning government back to the people is not only about banning these vaccine mandates or vaccine passports and standing with you on your individual rights and liberties. It is too about election integrity. And as I've been talking with friends at these tables, one of the things I have heard is that you're deeply concerned about what went down last fall. Listen, I too am deeply concerned about what went down last fall because I spent nights and weekends away from my family to campaign for President Trump and to re-elect our bright team in the legislature. Those were noble causes. Unfortunately, Democrats are a little less noble about things, friends, and right now we have a whole host of conservatives across the state who are telling me that they don't even want to vote. They're literally willing to walk away, feeling completely disenfranchised and worried that our process is so broken that it doesn't even matter anymore. I am telling you here this morning, not only must we vote, but we have to go as hard as we've ever gone in order to get this one done. You know, the good news is we now have 4 separate audits ongoing. The Legislative Bureau has completed their audit and came out with recommendations of 30 and 11 for the legislature and the Wisconsin Elections Commission. They have findings. Don't let anyone tell you that that didn't come up with anything. They have findings. The media is just not covering it, guys. And then we also have 2 audits coming out of the Wisconsin Assembly, the body to which Lauren and Nancy belong. And then also, just a couple weeks ago, the state Senate declared that they too are going to be doing an audit. And we also know of a number of private audits ongoing as well. And so these guys have done a terrific job. They have already authored and passed a bunch of really great election integrity legislation. And it's sailed through the legislature because we've got awesome majorities in not only Nancy Lauren's body, but also in the state Senate, and that's awesome because they passed with flying colors and then they sailed to the governor's desk. But what do you think the governor did with the election integrity bills?
Veto.
He vetoed them. And so that is what makes it all that much more important that you do come out and vote, okay? Because we need to re-elect these guys, but we also need to elect a new conservative governor so that in January of 2023, we can pass all those bills once again, and they will sail to the governor's desk once again, and the governor will now, because it's going to be conservative governor, will now sign those bills. And she will sign them on day one. No, she will guys, it's really important that you don't allow anyone to feel so disenfranchised that they just walk away. Years ago, after the Constitutional Convention, Ben Franklin was asked, "Sir, what do you have?" And he said, "A democratic republic, if you can keep it." The biggest danger to our democratic republic today is us, our team, just walking away from her. Do not abandon our republic, guys. It is worth it. It is worth the fight. And so those are the 4 things. They're pretty simple. Back to work, back to school, back the badge, return government back to the people. And I'm going to be saying these 4 simple things for the next year and 2 days, and I hope you join me. A couple of weeks ago, I said these 4 simple things when I spoke to all the small chambers of commerce across the state. You guys know that, in counties or even towns where you have a bunch of small business owners, there's usually a group of businesses that if they're not in the Rotary or Kiwanis, they'll join the chamber. And so I was talking to all of these wonderful small business representatives across the state, and I met a woman whose name is Emily. And she came up to me and she told me her story. She said, I had saved up for years and years and years. I had worked at my job and I saved up all this money to buy my American dream business. I'm like, that is awesome. Congratulations. What was it? And she said, a florist shop. I said, well, that must have been beautiful. Like, do you have it today? She said, that's funny that you asked that question. Because my husband was totally supportive, my family totally supportive. We threw our entire life savings into this shop and I loved it. I was working in something that just made people happy. But then when COVID-19 came, everybody canceled their weddings. You weren't even allowed to go to funerals. Nobody was really happy, and so you didn't really send flowers anymore. And then Tony Evers told Emily that she was not essential. And so one day when she realized that her florist shop wasn't going to make it, Emily walked into her store and she opened every cooler and she took out all of her inventory. She walked out onto the street and she began handing out flowers one by one to the people of Clintonville, Wisconsin. Until eventually it was all gone. Every flower and Emily's business. She went almost immediately to begin stocking shelves at her local supermarket because Tony Evers said those workers, those people, they were essential. But the cool thing about this story is that the people of Clintonville saw Emily's work. They saw her humility in being a business owner who wants to go just help make ends meet in her family. And they saw her character. They saw how resilient Emily was. And eventually they came together and they asked Emily to be the head of their Chamber of Commerce. That's how I met Emily. When she came up and introduced herself as the head of Clintonville's Chamber of Commerce. And I think, guys, there's a little bit of Emily in all of us across Wisconsin right now. We've all had a heck of the last 2.5 years. So much has been taken from us. But we are resilient. You guys probably know, some of you know, that my favorite verse is Romans 5:3, which is not only so, but we also glory in our suffering. For suffering produces perseverance, perseverance character, and character hope. And hope does not disappoint. Amen. Friends, this movement will not disappoint. And next year we're going to take back the governor's office and we are going to retire Tony Evers permanently. Thank you guys so much for what you have done. Thank you for what I know you will do between now and election day and next year. May God bless you and may God bless the great state of Wisconsin. And I will take questions. Go ahead.
Yes. I have a question about the last election, 2020.
Mm-hmm.
Do you believe, there were not dodging the question like other politicians, do you believe that Joe Biden legally won the election in 2020 in Wisconsin and other states?
I do. I believe Joe Biden won the election in Wisconsin. I can't speak to other states. But I do think that there were a ton of underhanded and scurrilous tactics used in 2020, and that is the whole point of A, the investigation, and B, making sure that we end the use of these tactics, which we in the Republican Party find unethical and we think are immoral. But I do think that there's not enough attention being paid to some of the things that I think Republicans can do to boost our numbers, but then also fight legal battles. Like, for example, do you guys realize that the Green Party candidate was not even on the ballot?
Yep.
Do you guys realize that in 2016, the Green Party candidate for President of the United States here in Wisconsin, Jill Stein, got 30,000 votes? Now, do you recall the margin by which they say Joe Biden won the state of Wisconsin? Now, should we be a little bit reflective about how the Wisconsin Elections Commission kind of bebops through decisions? I think we all should. And that is why I have called for elections no longer to be administered and governed by the WEC, but instead the legislature.
Yay!
If we're looking for more accountability, unelected bureaucrats is not accountability. These guys you could fire every other year if you feel like it. They're my good friends, don't. But if you don't like who you have, you can fire them. And elections have consequences. And so I think more accountability is what we need. I don't think that the Wisconsin Elections Commission is serving as an accountable agency in any way, shape, or form right now.
So you think it should be abolished?
Yeah, it needs to be replaced.
And how will that happen?
Well, you need legislation in order to change it. We could perhaps do it through the budget. So as soon as my election is over, we go directly into executive budget, because in Wisconsin we essentially do two budgets. So the governor does an executive budget, and then they turn around and do a legislative budget, which is what will eventually make it to the governor's desk. So if the governor is of a different party than the legislature, the governor basically does a budget that in this last case was essentially ignored. And I will say the same thing for when we came into office in the Walker Kleefisch administration. You know, in 2010, after our election, we were handed, the Doyle budget and then brand new numbers that had just been revised. And we had no idea just how bad it was, both the budget and our budget whole. I mean, Governor Doyle had just done a horrid job. And so here we were, the day after Election Day, and this pile of mess was in our laps, and we had to go to work immediately. I mean, we were working long days trying to start from scratch, because there was really nothing usable that he had handed us. The really nice thing, though, is that we've been on a team for a really long time, and this is something that I would love to stress to you all as well. We need to all be on the same team.
Yeah.
Like, we need to quit circular firing squads, period. It's really unhelpful, and it just gives Democrats fodder for more television ads or more. I told you, they've already put out a statewide television ad against me. They've also done 4 different videos. Like, I don't know who is doing their editing, but someone is making a pretty penny off of editing together videos, saying that, I don't know. It's a bad thing when Republicans fight amongst themselves. We need to be united right now, because Democrats have managed to unite over some of the most ridiculous garbage I have seen in my life. This entire woke culture, changing our entire energy system into things that just don't work in Wisconsin or the Midwest, period. Eliminating some of the most important rights that we have. I mean, going to church, guys, they shut it down. I mean, some of this stuff just needs to end. And I think what we saw in Virginia is Republicans United. And that's what we need to do.
They're united to the educational front, the parents and our children. What may help you is that when you hear trust the science, in 2020, the CDC itself did a study of young adults 18 to 25 years old, and we have 3 children that fit within that category. 24% of them in the previous 30 days of the study had stated that they had either considered or attempted suicide because of the current situation. Then you get into La Crosse County. They just had their meeting with their school board about budgets of next year. The students formed a group and presented that they wished that part of the budget would be dedicated to psychiatrists available to the school opposed to just the counselors. So they're begging, and that's your future voting base. So they're begging, and they understand that we have problems. This has caused problems for us mentally. So it could work both ways. You could help them, which they desperately need, but they should and probably will also remember who helped them get where they want. And now with your daughters, 12 to 17-year-olds, the emergency room visits for either self-harm or suicide attempts has gone up 56% nationwide this year, since February. So
I hope you guys can all hear this.
that is the mental health issues that our children, caused by Evers and the other idiots in DC, are causing.
But friends, this is everywhere. Everywhere across the state. And you heard him, he said that his kids are in a slightly older demographic. And so this is troublesome for every demographic. Loneliness and isolation, and frankly a pandemic of fear, which Democrats have used to expand government, try reaching into your lives and taking away your rights in order to spread this culture of fear and dependence on government, is something that will be our legacy for our children if we are unwilling to take it back right now. We got to walk back everything that they have attempted over this last 3 years. When I say Tony Evers is too weak for this job, he's just not up to the job. It doesn't mean that there's nobody in there pushing bad policies. He's surrounded by fire-breathing dragons. Let me tell you this. He's just the one who comes out and has vanilla ice cream with Joe Biden. But make no mistake, there are plenty of people in there pushing him to do things that will do lasting damage and long-term harm to our children, our young adults, and just our workforce and small businesses in general. I can't tell you in the last week and a half how many small business owners have told me, this vaccine mandate goes, I'm losing 30% of my workforce. 30% of my workforce. This is almost unbelievable, guys. I mean, right now the big threat is that, anyone on a propane tank who lives rurally is going to go bankrupt over a cold winter because it's going to be absolutely hideous to pay to heat your house. But on top of that, because of Joe Biden's transportation logistics snarls that Tony Evers has done absolutely nothing to help, there are going to be no toys for Christmas. So you tell me which future you would prefer for our children. And I think hands down, it's a conservative future. Sheriff.
What are the number 1 and number 2 existing documents that you will consider most important to you in your governmental decision making?
Oh, well, I suppose the Bible. It's very clear, guys, that I'm a Christian, and you guys are well aware of that. In 2010, the Milwaukee Journal-Sentinel, the largest newspaper in the state, declared that Jesus was my campaign manager. So all that tells you, I hope, all that tells you is that I'm accountable to more than just you. I'm accountable to one power higher, and then I would say that both the federal and the state constitution. So I guess that's 3. But there you go. Go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you for your energy and all your effort. I got involved, like a lot of folks here, I think, because I woke up and realized that the person who had won the presidency of the United States was not the person occupying the office. So all of these horror stories are not only predictable, they're bankable. And until you move to number one, which is even your number four, election integrity, I don't think you have a snowball's chance in hell of winning the governor of the state of Wisconsin. I'm sorry that you do not believe that Trump won Wisconsin, but you've had felonies committed by the WEC, and all of our issues, in my opinion, my humble opinion, pale in comparison to the ability of my vote not to be stolen. As we sit right now, nothing has changed in Wisconsin with the laws to stop my vote from being stolen again. I recommend to our legislatures, if Josh Call won't prosecute, you cut out his budget. I'm told the legislature has power of the purse. If Tony Evers will veto these bills, so my vote is no longer stolen, you shut this flippin' state down. Cut out their money, because that's the only way we're going to do it. If these election laws are not changed, I think you admit it. You go around this state, and election integrity is the number one issue. Yes. And you don't even believe that it was stolen. You know. So,
well, okay.
I mean, you can just bank on all this bad stuff. As soon as the people in charge are no longer accountable people, I don't believe Evers won. I don't believe. I know for the last two elections, the system's been rigged and nothing's going to stop it. And the America that we grew up in is no longer here. If our leaders are no longer accountable to the people, this book has been written countless times in history, it always ends badly.
Okay. In all kindness, I respectfully disagree that all is lost and that we're never going to be back in power again.
I'm not saying all is lost. I'm just saying we got to get the laws changed because they haven't changed.
Well, that's great. It's great to say that the laws ought to change, but there's no way to compel forcefully Tony Evers to sign the laws that have already passed across his desk.
Does the legislature have the power of the purse in the state or not?
The budget has already passed, and Tony Evers already funded the budget. All right, so that process has passed. The next process we need to attack is getting rid of Tony Evers the legal way, which is next fall's election.
They've got the system rigged. You're not going to win.
This is what I'm talking about. We cannot have a defeatist attitude,
I'm still going to vote. I'm still going to vote.
Okay.
I'm smart enough to know it's rigged.
You're here, though.
Because
You chose to come here. You chose to come here, and you all chose to come here to find out how we're going to fight on election day, knowing the Democrats are going to come in and do the exact same thing that they did last fall, right?
So why did
Right.
how did Youngkin win then?
5 points to the strategy that we must execute with excellence, or else they will do what they did in the last election, and we won't have a Youngkin-style victory. Here's what we need to do. In the state of Wisconsin, ballot harvesting is not technically illegal. I know some of you feel this is really ugly, but if Democrats are going to ballot harvest, we must go harder. Number 2, Democrats hire mercenaries. We in the Republican Party depend on sweet little volunteers to do the same things. Their army is much, much bigger than ours because they pay mercenaries, paid fighters to do the same things we are completely reliant on sweet volunteers to do. We have an expression in politics, laugh if you want to. Democrats get mad, they all send $15 to act blue. Republicans get mad, they all post a meme on Facebook. And you guys go ahead, post to Facebook, but we also need you giving $15 to a campaign. One of their campaigns, my campaign, somebody's campaign, because we need to pay the fighters who are going to come in and do the work. Register the voters. Work on the first project. Do some of the other things that I'm about to talk about. That's point number 2. Point number 3. The WEC has already said that those laundry bags full of ballots in the park is legal. If the Democrats are going to do laundry bags full of ballots in the parks, then we need to do laundry bags full of ballots in the parks and then the churches, and then the gun stores, and all the places. Number 4 has already been discussed here in this meeting today. Poll workers. I'm not talking about poll watchers. Poll workers. By law, your boss must give you the day off of work to go work the polls. By law, you must be paid to work the polls. There are 72 counties across Wisconsin. That means 72 county parties across Wisconsin. By law, your county clerk has to accept a list from the Democrats and a list from the Republicans of people who have asked and volunteered to work the polls. The poll workers are the ones who check your photo ID, the ones who tear open the absentee ballots, put them into the machines, 2 by 2, initial things, inspect each of these ballots. Okay, those are the poll workers. If you want to find out whether there's something nefarious going on behind the scenes, you have to be behind the scenes, and you can be, but you need to sign up with your county party to be a poll worker, not a poll watcher. That's the only job I will ever tell you I want, is a job in state policy. And I hope that you would agree that in the 8 years that I already did serve you and prove to you that we do good policy work, you look at the victories of concealed carry, of photo ID, which we would not even have today if it were not for the Walker-Kleefisch administration, of prevailing wage reform, of right to work reform, of pro-life advances, of both condensing and dropping tax rates, of expanded statewide school choice, and of Act 10. Act 10 that has now saved $15 billion, and I became the only lieutenant governor in American history to face and beat back a recall election. And so, pardon me if I respectfully say, I think we did some good things, and that's my record. I'd like to do more good things and move even more aggressively and faster than we did in that administration. But we cannot do any of that. Any of this stuff, any of the election integrity stuff, we can't do any of it unless we win. And listen, I am, on the stump, going to go around for the next 365 days and tell people that it is not just going to be enough for us to say vote against Tony Evers, he failed. We must say vote for us, we have better ideas. That's why I started off telling you guys about the 56-point policy manifesto. That's why I started off telling you guys about the 4 points. Back to work, back to school, back to badge, give government back to the people. That is our message. But I also shared with you our plan for Election Day execution. That is a one-day thing. That is to guarantee we get across the finish line with the W. But what I am going to be spending my time talking about is what we do once we get that W, because it is all important.
So it's not
we
a
don't have
one-day
time
thing.
for
It's a
any-
month, because we need to
Right.
be able to do the absentee. We need to
And I will
promote
also,
absentee
and guys,
ballots.
I will also say, Monroe County, the poll worker thing is a right now thing. It is an urgent thing because November 30th is the deadline. You need to make sure you are signed up because our county parties submit these lists to the clerks on November 30th. Like, period, that's it. Now, there can be amendments in the future, but you are likeliest to get chosen if you get your name in now. So please get your name in now.
To me.
Yeah.
So, Rebecca actually went a little bit overtime. She was supposed to be in lacrosse at 10 o'clock and 10:30, okay? But Monroe County wants to thank Rebecca, okay? For coming out and being honest, okay? Talking to you, okay? Talking to these people here who are our activists, okay?
God bless you guys. Thank you so
And
much for
and
what you
take
do.
more of these cards, because you have to give these cards to your family and friends, and you have to get them out to vote. But thank you so much for coming and joining us today.
Thank you.